31-5. That's the Nothing Personal Word of the Day for Monday, June 10th, 2024. NBA teams are 31-5 when they win the first two games of a best-of-7 series in the NBA Finals. So therefore, the Boston Celtics have officially been named, in other news tonight, the NBA championship. That was so... I'm off my game already. I can feel it at 8:01, 1 minute into the week, as I'm fully dressed head to toe. I have to leave here right at the end of the show. Jury duty today, doing my civic duty, appearing for service, which means I can't have shorts on. Of course, you have to respect the court. So I've got a little, I don't know if you're familiar with this, back of the knee sweat going already, but bags packed, ready to go. So we're going to start that again. 31-5 is our word of the day because NBA teams are 31-5 when they go up 2-0 in a series in the NBA Finals, which means the Celtics are going to be the NBA champions, which means the Celtics are going to be coronated the way that everyone thought they would be, which means the series is way less competitive than we thought because the Mavericks can't shoot, which means the series is way less competitive than we thought it would be, given that Porzingis truly is a difference maker, though there's a chance his leg is hurt again. I mean, I'm not wishing that on him, but maybe that'll make it a little more competitive. If you're Boston, you're loving life. Tatum can't shoot. He's passing a little better. Luka got a triple-double. Kyrie can't hurt. Is hurting your team because he can't shoot. Basically, it's been a series where you're lucky to get a push in game two. It was a 7-point line that we got at DraftKings. It ended up being a push when we did it on Friday. And all I was thinking about during the course of the game is, God, it feels like Dallas is missing a lot of free throws. And I try not to look at stats during the game because I want to actually watch the game unfold. And of course, at the end of the game, you look and the Mavericks missed 8 free throws and the Celtics missed 1 and the Mavericks lost by 7. Which makes you think, I guess this is competitive. Maybe the Pat Riley theory is in effect that a series doesn't start till someone loses at home. Therefore, this series hasn't started. But man, it's pretty hard to look at that game and think anything other than the Celtics are going to win. So when you are in a series that you are the underdog, and you're in a series when you're down 2-0, and you've got to beat a team 4-5 who hasn't lost, I'm trying to think the last time the Celtics lost a game. They swept the Pacers. I bet you they haven't lost in a month. Literally, it's June 10th. I bet they have not lost. Coca. I'm sure there's no way to find it, but when is the last time the Celtics actually lost a game in real time? I always liked that when we would keep track of that. We'd have our phones, or before cell phones, we'd have watches or timers or whatever we do. Anytime there's a long time on offense in a baseball game, you're trying to pay attention to how long it's been since your pitcher, May 9th, was their last loss against Cleveland. That's cool. That's been over a month by a day. You keep time. How long has it been since the pitcher's been on the mound? If you score like 8 runs and you have a rule in place that you're generally not willing to break, but anything over a half hour of sitting still, you can send your pitcher back into the bowels of the stadium, outside the clubhouse, into the batting cage, throw a few pitches, get loose. But you're thinking about those things because getting cold and then getting hot can be dangerous. They use that in football when there's a long drive to end the second quarter, and then a long drive for the same team who gets the second half kickoff. And then you say in game time, it's been 16 minutes, but in real time, the quarterback hasn't been on the field for 69 minutes. I remember thinking, how is that with Porzingis, who hadn't played in a month, comes out and crushes game 1, still a difference maker in game 2. And so when you're losing a series, you have to think about ways that you can try to gain an emotional edge, a psychological edge, because the physical edge you're not getting, the edge in the box score you're not getting. Jason Kidd is the coach of the Mavs. He tried it. I give him credit. I think he may have come up with it on his own. Maybe there was a conversation with the front office, but it's pretty good. Before game one, Jason Kidd had a normal press avail. Everything's fine because when you're tied at 0, the assumption is everything's going to be great. Then before game 2, Jason Kidd tried something just slightly different. He declared twice, actually, during media availabilities that Jaylen Brown is Boston's best player. And he did it in a way to try to stir the pot. Love that. Did it in a way to try to see if he can create any sort of jealousy or division amongst the superstars, Brown and Tatum. Love that. If you are the front office in Boston or you are the head coach, you are definitely addressing what Jason Kidd said, and you are making sure that everybody has the talking points. And what should scare you if you're a Mavericks fan, what should bother you if you're a Knicks fan, is that the Celtics were on it. They responded perfectly. Well, how do you deal with that if you are players? Very simple. You say, I don't have a reaction if you're Jaylen Brown. You let Tatum give the reaction. And Tatum's saying, hey, I'm good. It's a team sport. We wouldn't be here without Jaylen Brown. He literally said that. I think it's really quite outstanding. What I'd like to go to as part of the back and forth. So there's the gamesmanship of these games in a series. It can sometimes manifest itself in hard fouls. It can manifest itself. Luka was already slapping away at Jaylen Brown during the game last night when Brown was hand checking him off the ball. But you also have to look to the post-game press conferences. You're always looking to see what the other team is saying, what tone are they saying it in, what mood are they in, and you see if there is any way to take advantage. Let's go to Joe Mazzulla after the game and hear what he said.
Tired of hearing about one guy or this guy or that guy and everybody trying to make it out to be anything other than Celtic basketball. And everybody that stepped on that court tonight made weighted plays on both ends of the floor. It's the most important days.
It's perfect. His messaging is perfect. This is a team game. This is the game we play. There is nothing Dallas can do or say that will absolutely in any way get us off our path to a championship. If you are the Mavericks, you've got to be scared that you are losing this series, and pretty much you're going to. I don't think the Panthers should be worried about winning or losing the series, and I don't think the Oilers should be worried about winning or losing the series. It's only been one game of the Stanley Cup. I watched that on Saturday night. Anybody else watch with me? We'll find out when the ratings come. Not many of you are watching the NBA Finals, but you like to hear about it. Let's talk about the Stanley Cup. I am happy to admit, unlike certain people maybe in the Le Batard universe, I hadn't seen Edmonton play one time. I admit it. I'd read about it. I'd read about Connor McDavid, knew about Connor McDavid, just had not seen him play this year. I knew they'd gone through 7 games to get rid of Vancouver. Shout out to Tocchet, but I just hadn't watched them. I'd been watching East Coast, Eastern Conference hockey for the playoffs. Watch the Panthers and Rangers first round, watch them play in the second round, conference finals, etc. I'm watching the Oilers thinking to myself, I don't quite get how hockey works in that you can look like a dominant team and not win the game. And the Oilers looked like a dominant team against the Panthers in game 1. But all it takes is a hot goalie. And Bobrovsky for the Panthers is hot, and you can ride that to 3 more wins. You can ride that to a cup if he stays that healthy. And it got me thinking about how you put together a hockey team, because it was striking to me upon further research. The Oilers have done it through the draft, and the Panthers have done it through trades and free agency. In baseball, there are debates galore about building through the draft, when you complement through free agents, when you add to your team, when do you make trades, when do you trade your young players. It is likely the number one debate that you have internally as a front office once you're given the payroll by your owner or your team president. You sit and talk about what is the way that we want, what's our vision? What are we selling to both the owner and then to our fans, to our sponsors, to our sales department? How do we want to do this? It doesn't count when a team is forced to go a certain direction. Let me explain what I mean by that. I could argue the Marlins and the Rays have no choice but to build through the draft and then to trade young players and try to supplement it with occasional free agents because they just don't have the revenue to support a middle of the road, forget top of the chain, even a middle of the road payroll. But of course, your response is going to be the owners are all billionaires. Let them just spend more money. If they're losing money, who cares? Everyone should be able to be at the top of the salary structure, which of course you'd very well know if you don't have a salary cap, that's not going to exist. And even in a salary cap, you can be Inter Miami and be miles ahead. You can be the Golden State Warriors and pay luxury tax, be hundreds of millions of dollars in obligation, different than a team like Minnesota who's paid the tax once, or a team that just doesn't want to go above the tax threshold. So there are tons of different debates because your main answer as a fan, hey, all teams should be spending more. That's your default position, which I'm totally fine with. But if you look at the breakdown of teams and payrolls, you see there is a pretty wide band every single year, no matter what. So if you're on the bottom of that band, you really don't have a choice. The Panthers are a team that lived at the bottom of that band. Low payrolls, low games won, terrible instability in ownership. And in comes Vinny Viola and Matt Caldwell, Doug Sifu, and they completely changed how the Panthers operated. Not unlike what I tried to do for 1 year. Tried to change how we operated. And here's the part that I got wrong that the Panthers got right. If you want to change who you are, and I love this line from the movie Love the Coopers, shout out to Anthony Mackie, be the change you want to see. That probably is not an exact quote, but he was talking to Marissa Tomei and saying, if you want to be a better person, just start being a better person. You can control how you are. It's a corollary of fake it till you make it. Great plan if you run a sports team until the owner changes his mind and says, I don't really want to lose that amount of money again, so we're going to change the philosophy and make sure that we make a profit, or at least break even. It is true that that's what happened with the Marlins. It is true that's what happens with most teams, because it is only the rare team that has a plan and sticks to it and sees it through. It's really hard to see a plan through when it doesn't work to start. It's really hard to see a plan through when the noise around you says, change it, be better, do better. It's really hard to see a plan through when people are sending you messages saying, why would you expect things to be different? But the Panthers and the owners decided that's not the noise we're going to listen to. We're going to keep going, and we are going to manifest our plan into a power franchise. And that's what they've done in Sunrise. You may call it Miami, but it's actually Sunrise, Florida. And the other team in the Cup, Edmonton, this is a dynasty team. For those of you who don't follow hockey, Edmonton won. They were a dynasty in the late 70s, early 80s, mid 80s with Gretzky, Messier. Messier even won a cup there without Gretzky. Hard to argue that they are a low revenue team until you look into the finances of hockey and say, the Canada teams ex Toronto have some revenue and valuation issues, like Ottawa. And so the Oilers decided they were going to put it together by drafting these players. They got lucky and got a 1-1 overall and got Connor McDavid. And I implore you, no matter what you're doing tonight, just watch the playoffs, the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs, for 8 minutes. Just watch Connor McDavid. He's a ballerina on skates. The other thing I watched this weekend that I wanted to talk about was the London series. Yes, I sort of watched Yankees-Dodgers as well. We had a pick of the day for that. I watched what Aaron Judge did. I watched the Yankee fans. I watched the Dodger fans in the Bronx. But I was pretty focused on London. Got to wake up at, well, I was up way earlier. I'd watched a movie already, more than one, and a couple series of Shameless, a couple episodes of Shameless before the London game started yesterday at 10 a.m. The Phillies had won game one on Saturday, which means the Mets really needed to win yesterday. And it was a difficult game for them to win, but they did. The game ended on a 2-3 double play. I believe that's the first game in history to end in a 2-3 double play. Normally it'd be a 5-2-3 or a 1-2-3, a 3-2-3, but just a straight 2-3 requires the bases loaded and a little dribbler in front of the plate that literally doesn't go more than 10 inches out in front of the plate. And it's got to be with one out in the ninth inning. Normally, you wouldn't say that things have never happened, but that had never happened. So MLB's happy because the team split, which is pretty much what you tell owners you're rooting for when they do international games. And yes, the Mets have 2 international games this year, not 7. And next year, maybe the Mets will have 2 more, unlikely, but not 7. Hello, Oakland. Is that too subtle a comment? Are people aware of the debate about Oakland asking for 7 home games out of Vegas? It's funny. So I'm watching the London game, and I'm thinking about my favorite topic. And I'm on Twitter, and I'm looking around and texting back and forth with Coca, because Steve Cohen, for whatever reason, felt the need to meet the media while the team was in London. And Steve Cohen never misses an opportunity to meet the media, and I love it. Good for him. You earned that right if you bought a team. Whenever you want to talk as an owner, there will be media. Think about the power of that statement. You don't need to send out anything. You can do it every day. When an owner speaks, the press will be there to report it. I'm picturing Steve Cohen not telling anyone that he was going to sit with the media. Or if he did tell his own PR guys, I picture his PR guys as flustered, finished, and really not caring. Because how do you coach the uncoachable? Eventually, your coach will just stop coaching you, which means either you get rid of the player, get rid of the coach, find a different voice, or you just settle in to the reality that this is going to happen and you can't change it, which is an incredibly frustrating way to live. But I think that's what Steve Cohen's advisors likely do. What do you think Steve Cohen would cover meeting the media from London? Well, first he wanted to make sure that he let you know that everything's good. Don't you worry. The Titanic is sinking. His 5-year window is closing. Attendance is in the crapper. But don't you worry. Steve Cohen will be there on deck playing the oboe like nothing's wrong. He made sure to tell us that the fans are in good spirits. I was hanging out with them in the pub. Couple things on that, Steve. Most people, when they're hanging in a pub, are in good spirits. 2, any Mets fans who love the Mets enough to travel from the U.S. to London for a series, they are never going to be unhappy. You could lose a hundo 10 years in a row, and those fans who make the trip to see you play internationally will always be in good spirits. 3, don't mistake keyboard courage and keyboard truth for in-person courage and in-person truth. if owners judged the mood of fans and whether fans liked them according to what happens when an owner interacts with a fan, then owners would all be beloved. Very, very few fans are willing to meet you at a pub or on the concourse and boo you and mother F you and say that you're the worst owner of all time. So owners, when they need a ego lift, you just go outside, you see a few people, they want your autograph, they want your picture, done. Then you retreat back into your owner's cave or back to Twitter in Steve Cohen's instance. He said the fans have been through worse. That's why everyone's having a blast. I did learn in 18 years never to do that. Don't compare misery. I sort of learned that. Isn't that one of those lessons that everything I need to know I learned in kindergarten? Adults, I think, did not get the message. No one gives a crap about how you're feeling. No one cares to hear about your kids. No one cares to hear about your problems. They won't admit that, of course. They'll file it under the empathy. Steve Cohen had something else to say. People are going to think I'm wired. Wired as in robotic. I'm just telling you the truth. How many people like it when your friends out to dinner bring out their phone and show you pictures of their kids or of their last trip that you weren't on? Just by a show of hands. Are you interested in that? Look, here's a 10-second video of my son trying applesauce for the first time. Look at his face. Steve Cohen also talked about food in London. For those of you who travel, been to London, there's some really good restaurants in London. But overall, the food in London puts the M in mediocre, and they know it. That would be like Steve Cohen going there and saying, you know what I love about London? Way better than New York? The dentists. It sort of lacks credibility. And as owner of a team in New York, why would you say, oh, the food is way better in London? Better restaurants, better food. Just seems silly. I'm not really sure what his goal was in meeting the media, other than to tell you all is well. Fans are good, food's good, we're totally fine. Maybe that was his point. This was before they won game 2. After, of course, they get right onto a plane, head home. The players were not altogether thrilled to be in London, but they had fancy bats and fancy cleats. For the record, I would not let a player of mine wear cleats with the colors of another team. Yes, I'm talking about De La Cruz and his Dodgers cleat. Love that he's thankful that the Dodgers drafted him, but you're not wearing a Dodgers cleat for my team. And I don't apologize for that. And I don't know whether I cut him. That's a shout out to you, Pablo. So the players were a little antsy in London. They had a bunch of appearances. That's part of the deal. You get paid extra. I don't know if you know that. Those players on Philadelphia, New York did not go to London for free. There's a higher per diem. There's also an amount of money they get per game for going for the trip. Say 20 grand a person, could be more. It's not nothing. You fly comfortably. Did you see the Mets all flew in the same blue jumpsuit? I don't know how that happened. There must be, I'm telling you, David Stearns and Steve Cohen must have way more control than I ever did. Getting all our players to wear the same thing when we played internationally, I don't think we would have been able to do that. But they did that, unless it was sponsored and we gave the players money to do it. Maybe the Mets were paid to wear the blue jumpsuits. I don't think we have a picture of it, but if you Google Mets flying attire, my guess is you'll see the jumpsuits. It's not called the jumpsuit. Sweatsuit? Leisure suit? There's lots of different words. I wonder what the new word is for that. Fashion suit? I'm sure I missed that. The players chimed in with their view of the London series. Bryce Harper, he wants to play longer in London. He wants to do like a tournament, a 4-team tournament in London. Thinks that'll make it good. He wants to come and stay for a week or two. He's the same one who said, hey, I want to play in the Olympics, find a way to stop the season for 2 weeks. You think he would have checked with his union first? Half the union doesn't, I was going to say, no like that. 4-8-69. The union does not like that. Half the union doesn't. Pitchers, you can't shut them down in the middle of a season. You cannot shut down pitchers for 2 weeks without any sort of spring training or rehab starts after. There is no solution to that. We have looked at that for, God, every one of the 18 years I was there and every one of the 7 years since I've been gone, 25 years minimum. How do we do something in the middle of the season? How do we get major league players to play in the Olympics? And this was after the Olympics got taken away. Baseball got taken away from the Olympics. You have that conversation. That's how the World Baseball Classic was started, because baseball was not in the Olympics anymore. And the debate about when to do the WBC is a loser debate, because March is bad for pitchers' health. The summer is bad for pitchers' health. October, November is bad because everyone's exhausted and 28 teams have stopped playing, 2 weeks prior to the end of the World Series. There's no great solution to it. But Harper, from a position player standpoint, said, I want it. I want an in-season tournament. I want to play in the Olympics. Lindor was like, it's too much time off. He wanted to play immediately upon landing in London. Lindor, the union didn't allow that. They required the off day. Did you notice the Mets and Phillies were off Friday and that they're off today? It is one of the rules of the CBA that there is a baked-in extra off day on both ends of international play, a effort by the union to protect the health of the players, yada, yada. What do I think will happen with this London series? Everyone was all excited, Mets fans and Philly fans, and ESPN broadcast the games. MLB will continue to play these international games. But here's a little secret about why. We want you to believe that MLB is global. That's it. Just like the NFL, just like the NBA. We think if you see sold out games, if you see 55,000 people attending the game in London each day, you're going to say to yourself, wow, baseball's doing great in Europe. And then if I were to show you the financials, you'd say, wow, I should close this business. It's a bizarre concept that all these leagues are so interested in making you feel better about loving something and spending money on something because you feel like it's cool everywhere. Clothing companies do that. Musicians do it. Actors. Production companies. Multinational companies. Everybody does it. Everybody wants you to feel good about aligning yourself with something, because then they feel like you will be loyal to that. Hey, look around. It's pretty cool. Look at how big baseball is in London. I feel like it's okay for me to love it. Mark my words, they'll play there again. All right, we come back. I watched the new Glenn Powell movie that just dropped on Netflix on, I guess it was Friday. And then we're going to talk about what's going on with Caitlin Clark in the Olympics, because I believe that with the Stanley Cup, with the NBA Finals, with Major League Baseball playing in London, I believe that what you all talked about the most was Caitlin Clark being left off the Olympic team. I'll give you my thoughts right after the break. Welcome back to Nothing Personal. Shout out to Meadowlark Media. Ken, thank you for coming here. Alex Byram setting up the studio, improving the equipment. Hopefully you can see me a little more clearly. The lights are changed. I'm not sitting on 4 pillows anymore, so I'm way more comfortable. If you're listening and not watching on Nothing Personal with David Sampson YouTube channel, then just know I'm fully dressed and ready to serve. Not like Alcaraz. Did you watch that finals of the French Open yesterday? I was watching the London game at 10. The French Open finals started at 9. The tennis match lasted like 4 hours and 20 minutes. Alcaraz beats Zverev. It was an incredible match. And all I was thinking is that the debate of, is Bob Cousy as good as Michael Jordan? That's now the debate of, could John McEnroe win a game off today's best players? And that is no slight to Johnny Mac with his wooden racket, kicking ass and taking names from the left side, serving volley. Loved it. But my God, the players today, it's got to be the shoes, Mars. It's got to be something. If you're not serving 130 Ks an hour, then you have no serve. It's like the entire tour is Roscoe Tanner. Coca, have you ever heard of Roscoe Tanner? I just realized there is a 69% chance that I just dropped a reference on a tennis player that Marty Fish will smile, who's a loyal engager of nothing personal. I'm not sure how many others of you. It's a good match, though. He's 21 years old. The era of Djokovic, Federer, and Nadal is over. They had been in the French Open final every year since 2004 until this year, one of those three. What an era for those guys. Now Alcaraz has won 3 Grand Slams at 21. He is only 21 Grand Slams behind Djokovic. 21. That means he'd have to win the Grand Slam for 5 straight years, although he is only 21. I guess if he plays till he's 37, which is very rare, but Djokovic is that. Let's say he plays 16 more years. He has to win more than 1 Grand Slam a year. That's how dominant Djokovic has been over his career. How do we even get on the French Open? Let's talk about Hitman. What'd you all think? Good? Were you entertained? It's a movie about a man who is an undercover policeman, but also a teacher. He sort of is a geeky guy in the classroom, and making Glenn Powell, here's where the movie lost me. There's some men, I love you, Paul Giamatti, but you can play a geeky professor. It's slightly more difficult for Glenn Powell to pull that off, as he is as good looking as the Marlboro Man type of thing. And so you're supposed to believe that he's sort of geeky, but on the side, he's this undercover person who acts like a hitman in order to get people who hire a hitman to get arrested. And so the movie is about Glenn Powell getting people arrested for wanting other people killed. But then, oh God, there's a gorgeous woman who wants to get her husband killed. And he says, you don't want to do this, because he wants to save the damsel in distress. E equals MC squared. That is how formulaic Hitman is. I watched it. Should you watch it? I didn't think to actually respond that way. Yes, you should. How about that? If you want to be entertained, watch it. It doesn't break new ground. I didn't find it original. I didn't find it believable. And I don't mean not believable like, wow, I don't think that Darth Vader can be Luke's father, but I'm talking just Glenn Powell in general. Wasn't buying it. Hitman, decent soundtrack. We're doing it, folks. We're talking about Caitlin Clark again. We're talking about the WNBA again. And the reason we're doing it, while some of you may feel there's an oversaturation, I get that. Although our data indicates that you're listening to these segments, this is an interesting one to me. The amount of misinformation and emotion. We've talked about Caitlin Clark and the attention she's getting. We've talked about the absolute reality that race is involved in myriad ways. Adam Silver acknowledged it. There's nothing like a racial argument using the unlikeliest of sources as lighter fluid in order to restart something that may be going away or may have run its course. The Caitlin Clark story, just when you think it's done, there's another controversy involving her. The USA Olympic team for Paris, which is happening according to the commercials during the French Open on July 26th. So the women's basketball team was named, and Caitlin Clark was left off the team. As you can imagine, it created quite a few responses. So instead of having you sift through them all, I'm going to give you mine, and then I'd like you to make your own decision on how Olympic teams get put together. There is a general manager of an Olympic team. There's a president of an Olympic committee. Sometimes there's tryouts. Not really. Other times there are powerful players who have a say in who's on the team. Yes, no Isaiah on the dream team. Sometimes it is dictated, like there had to be a college player on the 1992 dream team. For those of you who are misunderstanding that fact, Christian Laettner was not put on the dream team in 1992 because they couldn't find a better NBA player than Christian Laettner. Christian Laettner was on the dream team in 1992 with Ewing and Bird and Magic and Jordan because that was the rule. There had to be one college player on that men's Olympic team. So Christian Laettner at that time was the exact choice and the right choice, given that you had to have somebody. Right now, there is no particular rule that I'm referring to as it relates to the WNBA. There are two sources who claim that Caitlin Clark was left off the team because she was not going to get the type of minutes that fans would have hoped. Therefore, she would not have played as much as fans would have hoped. Therefore, fans would have been upset. Therefore, it's better to leave her off the team. I'm trying to think of the last time I heard a greater bit of horse hockey than that. And these are veteran sources. I don't know if that means they're veterans players or they've been sources for a long time. Sort of a dangling modifier. Left unclear, left for me to decide. So I'm going to decide. I'm going to say it's players. I'm not playing if she's on the team. What role does the broadcaster have? John Skipper will tell you on a future sporting class. David, I had nothing to do with the players. I can't choose who does what. I've got no say. Not true. I'm sorry. Broadcasters, you do get involved. Does it mean that NBC had the right to name the Olympic women's basketball team? No. Does it mean that they can let it be known that they would like Caitlin Clark on the team? You bet your bippy. Is this a missed opportunity for women's basketball? Yes. Would there be more eyeballs on women's Olympic basketball with Caitlin Clark on the team? For sure. Show of hands if you're sure. How many gold medals have the women's USA basketball team won in a row? Well, I do this for a living. Didn't know the answer. Spoiler alert, it's a lot. Got to put our best players on there. No, you don't. Here's the thing about putting a team together and having the ability and the guts to ignore complaining players or overbearing media. When you're putting your team together and you want to do it with business in mind, you've got to embrace that and you've got to live that truth. It is absolutely wrong for the WNBA commissioner, Kathy, not to get involved. It's wrong for the Olympic Committee to not get involved. And the reason I say it's wrong, and this is not me telling you that I'm pro or anti Caitlin Clark. This is me telling you the reality of what moves the needle. It's not about race. It's not about talent. It's not about turnovers or rookie scoring. The arguments that you're hearing, she's one of the best 10. She's not one of the best 10. She's the best rookie. She's not the best rookie. She moves the needle. She doesn't move the needle. My standpoint, slightly different. What was the discussion like when she was not on the team? How one-sided performance? Hey, Metalark, that just happened right in the middle of a live show. Right in the middle. Speakers just went off. And then they went back on. I think we're going to have to deal with that, Coca. Do you know how to deal with that? Will you make sure you call somebody today and figure out what that is? What could have changed, given the fact that that's never happened once in 1,069 shows? I can't tell if we're even on the air right now. I'm just going to keep going. I can't hear you, Matt. So there's a chance that I'm talking to the wind. Hello. Oh, it's working. Thank you. Hello, 4869. That's a real 4869. My take is a little different because when you're putting the Olympic team together, I think from minute one, you recognize that this is not a regular women's Olympic year. This is not a regular team you're putting together. You can tell me all you want about the older players, how famous they are, how good they are. You can tell me no matter how loud you speak or yell, hey, David, you're missing all of these talented women. I don't care. Right now, today, there is no more famous player than Caitlin Clark, period. I don't care if she's the best or the worst player. Don't care. When you're putting together an Olympic team, you need a bench. You don't have to play her for 1 minute. The broadcasters wouldn't care. The fans wouldn't care. The Olympic Committee wouldn't care. You got to be smart enough to put her on a team because it moves the needle. Both needles. The needle of interest, the needle of ratings, the needle of money. That's 3 needles. When women's sports is having the moment it's been having. Now, women's basketball is basically taking advantage of that because it's the dream of every league to find a star to build around. That's why we spend so much money in Europe, in Asia, in South America, in Central America, anywhere in the Caribbean. You're doing it because you're trying to develop players. Well, the WNBA developed a player, and the player they developed has drawn the attention of everybody. Put her on the damn team. And don't say, oh, well, who are you going to replace her with? I don't care. It doesn't even matter to me whether she deserves to be on or not. That is the absolute truth of my position. Tryouts, earning, nepotism, don't care about any of it. Performance, results. You know how many amazing Olympic sports can be saved by maximizing the revenue and by the broadcast revenue that comes? And do you think that NBC and all of the broadcasting that they do, you don't think they're looking for ratings, celebrity, advertising revenue? That's what they are looking for. Stories. What a waste. Can't name her now, though. Too late. You missed the boat. Nothing personal pick of the day. We are 80 and 88. We had the Oilers beating the Panthers in game 1. It didn't happen. We had the Phillies beating the Mets on Saturday. That did happen. We had the Mavs +7 over the Celtics last night. That was a push. And then we had the Yankees beating the Dodgers on Friday night. Didn't happen. Dodgers won that game. So that's a 1-2 weekend, I believe. No, 1, 2. Yeah, 1, 2, and 1 weekend. I want to spend a few minutes talking about that Yankee-Dodger game on Friday night. Even yesterday's game. I love when players are mic'd when they're not my players. I love when there's in-game interviews in the dugout when they're not my players. I don't like having my players bothered, but I do know that I ask them all the time to be bothered because I understood that there was a bigger story out there than just me as president of one team. We had no choice but to try to increase the exposure of our sport, of our league, of our players. In the collective bargaining agreement, it actually outlines how players are responsible during national broadcasts. You go up to the player before the game and you ask the player nicely, would you like to be mic'd? The player says, what's in it for me? And you say, it's in the CBA. You get 10 grand. The player says, great. Or the player says, no. Turning down 10 grand, getting yourself ready for your post-playing career, you'd have to be moronic to say no, which was the reason why it was put that way. In theory, it should be a baseball player's job to do whatever's asked by the team or the league. But thank God they're protected by a union, so Kiki Hernandez got 10 grand. One thing that you are taught as broadcasters is when a player is mic'd, you have to be aware of what's going on in the game. The problem in baseball with a player mic'd and speaking to a baseball player who's in the field is that a ball can get hit to that player. Some broadcasters root for that to happen. Well, on Friday, a ball was hit to Kike Hernandez while he was live doing the mic, talking, and guess what? He made an error. And I went ahead and lost my mind. President of the Dodgers, Andrew Friedman, livid. You have to be livid. Because it wasn't a error that Kike would have made had he been focusing fully on the game and not on the interview. When Lindor was being mic'd up yesterday in the field, he was talking through the different things that he was getting ready for with the next pitch. When am I covering second? When am I not covering second? Who's on the bag? How many outs? Where are the runners? All the things you need as a defensive player. It is impossible to concentrate as a baseball player when you are on camera. I would pay the players 10 grand not to be on camera. Our picks of the day for today, we are taking the Brewers over the Blue Jays. Berrios is pitching for the Blue Jays. My old friend Ray is pitching for the Brewers. It's not ending well for the Blue Jays. I'm despondent. I don't think they're trading Guerrero to the Cubs anytime soon, but I'm definitely despondent about it. But we're taking Colin Ray minus 115 over the Blue Jays. And then we've got game 2 of the Stanley Cup playoffs. What's my pick? I'm picking the Oilers plus 114 to tie the series at 1. I don't know that you can count on a performance like Bobrovsky had 2 games in a row. You're the Panthers. You want to get that performance 4 days in a row, 4 games in a row. But I don't think he needs to be that good for the Panthers to win the Cup. And I don't think it is likely that he can shut down Connor McDavid and that line 2 games in a row. As a matter of fact, Coca, if there's a line that Edmonton doesn't get shut out, I would lay just about anything because that is damn good business. Oilers plus 114 over the Panthers seems to me to be one of my great bets of the day. Well, I'm off to jury duty. I'll give you a full report tomorrow. It's just business and civic duty. This is nothing personal.